Billionaire finds waitress and child crying at her son's grave. Stunning secret. This story follows Eleanor Sterling, a ruthless shipping magnate, who stumbles upon waitress Layla Brooks and 4-year-old Noah mourning at her son Damien's grave. The chance meeting unveils hidden bloodlines, a 3-year quest for justice, and a corporate empire built on lies, until love and truth bring it crashing down. The light November rain turned Willowcrest Cemetery into a mirror of slate and shadow, as Eleanor Sterling advanced between marble rows, a bouquet of calla lilies angled against her black coat. 3 years had passed since Damien's death, yet she visited on schedule once a quarter, 27 minutes precisely, then returned to Sterling Tower, where loyalty was measured in profit margins. But midway along the gravel path, she stopped dead. A young black woman knelt at Damien's headstone in a coffee-stained diner uniform, shoulders trembling. A small boy hugged her neck, both of them shaking under a dollar store umbrella. The child looked up, and Eleanor felt her pulse stutter. The boy's eyes were unmistakably sterling green, the color framed on every annual report her own eyes reproduced in boardroom portraits. "Move away," Eleanor said, voice cool as the drizzle. "This is private." The woman turned mascara, streaked by rain. "I'm sorry, we didn't know anyone was coming. Who are you, and why are you here?" "I'm Layla Brooks." She managed rising, but keeping a protective arm around the child. "This is Noah." The name landed with no weight Eleanor had expected none. "We come every month," Layla continued, "because Damien matters to us." Lightning might as well have struck the tomb. Eleanor's grip tightened on the lilies until the stems snapped. Damien, her only heir, had been meticulous about discretion. There had been rumors of romances, but a child. The boy stared back fearless, as if instinctively certain he belonged. "Explain." The single word sliced the rain. Layla straightened, chin lifting. "Noah is Damien's son." Everything inside Eleanor recoiled. "Impossible." "I would have known." "Would you?" Layla asked, voice soft, yet immovable. "Damien said you noticed numbers, not people." Before Eleanor could fire a retort, a memory surfaced. Unbidden, 8-year-old Eleanor pads into her father's study pajamas, damp from a nightmare. She asks for a story. He slides an income statement across polished oak. "Learn this," he says without looking up. "It'll comfort you longer than fairy tales." The numbers blur under her tears, but she studies them until dawn, determined never to need anyone again. Back in the cemetery, Eleanor shook off the echo. "Damien is dead," she stated. "Produce proof or leave." Layla's gaze flickered to Noah, then back. "His proof is standing right here." The boy released his mother's hand. Eleanor assumed mother. Questions roared behind her eyes, and stepped forward, tiny sneakers, blotting mud onto marble. He touched the engraved D in Damien Sterling's name, then laid a single wilted daisy beside Eleanor's lilies. The gesture, simple and sure, sliced through 3 years of boardroom bravado. She cleared her throat, but no words came. Rain thickened, pinning the trio in a gray cocoon. Eleanor scanned Layla's soaked uniform, noted the tired shoes, the frayed umbrella, the protective posture. An equation formed: waitress wages plus toddler expenses. Desperation. She could purchase cooperation. She always had. Yet the green eyes staring up at her blurred the arithmetic. "We're leaving," Eleanor said finally, though her feet refused. "You bring the child to Sterling Tower tomorrow, 10 o'clock sharp," Can't Layla replied. "I work a double shift. Quit. Bills don't quit." She bundled Noah, close umbrella rattling above them. "And we're not a puzzle for you to solve on your schedule." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "You presume far too much." "Maybe." Layla's lips curved, not insolent, but sure. But Noah deserves someone who sees him before she sees herself. Eleanor watched them walk away, small boots splashing through the puddles, umbrella tilting like a defiant flag. Her phone buzzed, Marcus reminding her of a merger call, but she ignored it, eyes fixed on the retreating pair, until the cemetery swallowed them. Another memory seeped in teenage Eleanor, at an elite prep school ceremony, trophies gleaming under chandeliers. Applause thundered, yet her parents' seats remained empty. She lifted the silver cup alone, painted smile hiding the hollow. Rain pooled around Damien's grave. Eleanor knelt for the first time, setting her broken lilies beside the boy's daisy. A waitress, a hidden grandson, and a threat to everything she'd built on polished stone. She rose, water streaming off her coat like melted armor. Tomorrow, the war would begin, on terms she dictated. Money remained the language of power. She simply had to remind them. Yet, as she turned toward the gates, sterling green eyes followed her in memory, bright as the ones she saw every morning in the mirror, and for the first time in decades, the arithmetic no longer balanced. Sterling green eyes haunted Eleanor all the way back to the penthouse. She rode the private elevator alone, watching her reflection fracture across the brushed steel doors, as if the arithmetic she trusted were now a broken equation. By the time the doors parted, on floor 63, she had already drafted a plan. Marcus, she called, striding across marble toward her oak-paneled library, assemble every investigator on retainer. I want a complete dossier on Layla Brooks and the child by dawn. Marcus Liang, efficient to a fault, followed at a jog. The board meeting is at 8. Move it to 11. She flung the library's double doors open. Once a sanctuary of first editions, the room would become her war room. She swept priceless volumes into cartons, while Marcus set up laptops, scanners, and a portable printer. Within the hour, mahogany gleamed beneath neat rows of manila folders, each tabbed with a single objective: Layla, Noah, paternity, damage control. Eleanor unlocked a drawer and removed a bottle of 50-year scotch. She poured 2 fingers, then stopped, remembering Damien's teasing grin, the night he convinced her to try sobriety with him for Lent. 40 days, mother, he'd laughed. What's the worst that could happen? 3 weeks later, he was dead, and the bottle became a monument to failure. She recapped it and set it aside. A ping announced the first investigator report. Layla Brooks, 27, waitress at Bayside Diner weekday, shift 6 a.m., 2 p.m. Bartender at Docklight Tavern Friesat nights. Landlord petitioned for eviction twice, but rescinded after partial payments. No criminal record. High school diploma. 1 citation for protesting port wage violations 2 years prior. Activist tendencies, Eleanor murmured. Interesting. Marcus placed an 8x10 photo on the table, Layla kneeling beside Noah outside a peeling brick building. Eleanor's gaze fixed on the boy's eyes. Her eyes set in a face the color of burnished walnut. The impossible tug of kinship warred with reflexive calculation. Run DNA, Marcus suggested quietly. I'll need consent. Her voice came out colder than intended. Priority is leverage. Financial pressure, family history, find me a seam we can split. More reports arrived like rifle fire. Layla's mother deceased from lupus when Layla was 19. No known father on record. Medical bills still in collection. Noah's birth certificate missing. Hospital search negative. As if the child had emerged from thin air, Eleanor tapped a fountain pen against the mahogany, rapid clipped, echoing the boarding school mornings, when she clicked a pencil through calculus drills, while other girls whispered about spring formal. She'd built armor out of recitations and dividends, but Noah's eyes pierced straight through. Another ping, credit statements. Layla sent monthly transfers, small but steady, to a Selena Brooks Ph.D. in Chicago. Family support, Marcus asked. Or tuition? Eleanor muttered, noting Layla's recent online purchases of used law textbooks. Why law books? Marcus opened his mouth, hesitated. Self-study, ambition. Ambition on waitress wages is delusion. Yet the idea unsettled her. Ambition was her native language, and she had never considered it delusional. She ordered coffee black, then paced before the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city glittered like data points. Somewhere beyond those towers, Layla tucked Noah into bed, likely wondering if Eleanor's threats would arrive with sunrise. A memory surfaced, unbidden, 15-year-old Eleanor in a cavernous auditorium lifting a trophy while her parents' VIP seats sat empty. She had pretended the spotlight was applause enough. It had to be. That night, she privately vowed never to need anyone, only results. Now results lay across the table, but they felt strangely insufficient. Ms. Sterling Marcus ventured. "If paternity is confirmed, I control the press." She snapped, then caught herself. Control had become reaction, not strategy. She inhaled slower. "Schedule Layla for 10 o'clock tomorrow. Offer, compensation. Compensation, $250,000. The figure tasted trivial. Full guardianship. She can visit every other weekend. Draft papers, Marcus typed. And if she refuses, Eleanor considered the question as she would a hostile takeover. Acquire, if not by purchase, by force. Custody courts favored stability, wealth, education. She possessed all three in surplus. Layla possessed none. She won't refuse. Eleanor said, though the certainty rang hollow. Another report arrived, a grainy security cam, still of Noah, at a public playground, laughter frozen mid-motion. Something inside Eleanor twisted an ache she refused to name. She closed the laptop. Enough for tonight, she told Marcus. Send cars for the legal team at 6. Left alone, she crossed to Damien's portrait, above the fireplace, painted after his graduation, the day he told her he wanted to audit port safety, instead of chase quarterly growth. She had laughed, called it idealism. He had said gently, "Not everything is measured in profit, mother." Lightning flashed beyond the glass, illuminating his painted eyes. Eyes identical to Noah's. For the first time, she admitted the arithmetic might always have been wrong. Yet old reflexes clenched tighter if the equation was flawed. She would balance it her way, with the assets she understood: money, influence, iron will. She turned back to the war room, now humming with screensaver light, and steeled herself for morning. Tomorrow, she would buy the future, just as her father had taught her. After all, she reasoned, everyone has a price. Across the river, in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled of baby powder and burnt coffee, Layla studied a battered civil procedure textbook, while Noah slept, curled against her side. She highlighted a paragraph about equitable relief, and without lifting her pen, whispered into the quiet, "We're almost ready, Damien. Just a little longer." And somewhere between those two rooms, one lined with mahogany power, the other with peeling paint, and hope, the storm clouds gathered, waiting for the first crack of thunder, to decide whose arithmetic would finally add up. Morning rattled the city with hard rain thunder, drumming against penthouse glass like a summons Eleanor could not ignore. By 9:30, her war room pulsed with activity, lawyers checking clauses, PR aides rehearsing talking points, but she dismissed them all, wanting the battlefield silent when Layla arrived. At 9:58, the elevator chimed. Layla stepped out in a thrift store suit, a shade too large at the shoulders, her hair pulled into a tight bun, still glistening with raindrops. Noah was not with her. Eleanor approved the choice. Children complicated negotiation optics. 2 security guards flanked the corridor, but Layla's gaze never wavered as she followed Marcus into the office that spanned half the skyline. Eleanor sat behind a desk of carved zebrano, its surface deliberately uncluttered, save for a slim leather folder and a Waterman fountain pen. A single chair, lower by design, waited opposite. "Sit," Eleanor said, gesturing. "I'll stand," Layla replied. "As you wish." Eleanor opened the folder and slid a cashier's check across the glassy expanse. $250,000. Immediate transfer. In return, full guardianship transfers to me. You will have supervised visitation every other weekend. Did you rehearse that in the mirror? Layla asked, tone almost curious. Eleanor blinked. No one interrupted her. Ever. The terms are generous. For a used car, maybe? Layla studied the check as if it were a museum relic. But Noah isn't a transaction. Eleanor leaned forward, voice growing metallic. Let me be explicit. Courts value stability resources you do not possess. I can give him private tutors, global travel inoculations against every threat the world might hold. He needs affection before airfare. Layla shot back. Something money hasn't helped you master. The words landed like a slap. Yet behind the sting, Eleanor felt the old hollow ache of trophies lifted in empty auditoriums. She smoothed her expression. Little sermons won't alter outcomes. Sign and you walk away with more than you'll earn in a lifetime. Layla lifted the check between two fingers, tore it cleanly down the middle, then again, paper snowing onto the priceless rug. Your lifetime and mine aren't priced in the same currency. Eleanor's composure cracked. You underestimate the weapons I can deploy. Lawyers, lobbyists, judges who owe me favors. Influence rents loyalty. Layla answered, eyes steady. It doesn't own it. She reached into her bag, not for papers, but for a small, dog-eared photo. She placed it gently on the desk. Damien laughing on a pier, arms around Layla, and a visibly pregnant woman whose smile mirrored Eleanor's high school yearbook. Isabella Sterling. Eleanor felt the room tilt. Old guilt seeped through polished veneer. Isabella, the niece she'd cut out during the '98 share consolidation. That betrayal had been buried under annual returns. Now it stared back alive in photography grain. Layla spoke softly. He wanted to tell you, but he was afraid you'd exile them both the way you exiled Isabella's father. Damien thought he could change your mind once Noah was born. He ran out of time. Thunder rolled overhead, so near the glass vibrated. Eleanor gripped the arms of her chair, but the practiced phrases of dominance refused to assemble. You bring hearsay and sentiment. Courts require evidence. I have evidence. Layla said, voice suddenly colder than Eleanor's ever was. Damien's letters, medical files, a DNA test ready for filing. But I prefer peace. She leaned in, and Eleanor caught the faint scent of rain and diner coffee. Withdraw your petition before you file it. Acknowledge Noah publicly. Support him privately. We can end this without scorched earth. Eleanor's laugh sounded brittle to her own ears. You presume leverage? Not presume. Layla picked up her bag. Calculate. The way you taught the markets to do. She glanced once at Damien's portrait on the far wall. He asked me to protect our son from the world that made you choose numbers over people. I intend to honor that. She turned to leave. At the threshold, she paused. There's an equation you've missed, Eleanor. When power meets patience, patience wins. Because it never runs out of capital, it compounds. The doors closed behind her with a hush, more violent than any slam. Eleanor remained frozen shards of check under her manicured nails, thunder still echoing across the spires. Across town, Layla exhaled only when the elevator hit the ground floor. Outside, the rain had eased to a hush. She dialed a number saved under a single initial S. It's done, she said. She offered the buyout. I tore it. Dr. Selena Brooks's voice warmed the line. Good. Next move. File the provisional custody defense by sunrise. And tell Carla the documents are ready if we need them. Are you ready? Layla looked up at Sterling Tower, its mirrored skin reflecting a brief flash of sun between clouds. I've been ready for 3 years. Unseen above, Eleanor pressed intercom. Marcus, draft emergency filings. Full custody. Expedite. Yes, Ms. Sterling. Anything else? She stared at the torn check, then at Isabella's smile, so like her own, yet unburdened by avarice. Find me a bottle of 20-year Macallan, she whispered, ignoring the sober pact she'd made with Damien. Tonight will be long. Marcus hesitated. Understood. While the city dried, 2 war rooms lit their lamps, one walled in mahogany, the other in peeling paint, and thunder moved east, leaving charged air and the certainty that the first volley had been fired. 2 war rooms burned through the night, one beneath cathedral-high ceilings that smelled of rare wood, and single malt the other, under water-stained plaster, where the only luxury was resolve. The first volley had been fired. Now both sides rushed to reload. Eleanor's library glowed with desk lamps as senior counsel Ethan Varma arrived, rain still peppering his coat. He scanned the custody motion Marcus had drafted, eyebrows twitching. We can push an emergency hearing on grounds of parental unfitness, but we'll need affidavits, doctors, child psych experts by Friday. Money accelerates everything. Eleanor replied, voice graveled by the Macallan she was halfway through. Book whoever's available. Ethan hesitated. Judges notice pay-to-play optics these days, especially if the press catches wind. I own the wind. Yet, even as she said it, Eleanor's eyes flicked to Isabella's photograph, now propped beside her keyboard. A ghost at the feast. Across the river, Layla's apartment pulsed with a different energy. Stacks of photocopied ledgers littered the coffee table. Sticky notes sprouted like battle flags. Dr. Selena Brooks finished dialing. Provisional custody defense is stamped and queued. Guardian ad litem request included. Investigative journalist Carla Mendez sat cross-legged on the floor, redlining a draft exposé. Your timing is wicked. SEC just opened inquiries into Sterling Holdings Cayman accounts. Unrelated headline today, but if we link them to port kickbacks. Not yet. Layla cut in, smoothing Noah's blanket, where he slept on the couch. Custody first. If she escalates, we open every folder. Professor Kofi Mensah looked up from his laptop. Civil RICO could bury her, but courts move glacially. Public opinion is faster. We'll need a media fuse long enough to worry her, short enough to keep momentum. Fuse is ready, Carla said, tapping her phone. Anonymous dropped to 3 outlets, embargoed 72 hours. Layla's heartbeat thrummed. For 3 years, she'd memorized statutes on stolen lunch breaks, learning to translate grief into footnotes and fury into precedent. Now the pieces assembled like a lock clicking open. Dawn bled silver over the skyline. In Family Court Division, C. Eleanor's legal entourage filled a conference chamber with tailored suits and the musk of intimidation. Layla entered alone, wearing the same overlarge suit, but her shoulders squared by something money couldn't tailor. The clerk handed out schedules. Hearing set for 10 days hence, barely time for chess moves, yet eternity if you fear losing. Ethan smirked. Layla's pro bono counsel hadn't appeared. Representing yourself, Ms. Brooks. A door swung wide. In strode Julia Navarro, senior partner at Morrison Reyes & Latham, flanked by 2 associates hefting caseboxes. Conversation froze. Even Ethan paled. Navarro nodded to Layla, like an old comrade, then addressed the clerk, notice of appearance filed. Respondent pleads affirmative defense of socioeconomic discrimination and seeks immediate restraining order against unilateral child removal. Eleanor's throat tightened. Marcus whispered, Navarro charges $2,000 an hour. They're pro bono. Eleanor muttered almost to herself, words she once used to sneer, now tasting of foreboding. The judge's aide distributed preliminary orders. Both parties barred from relocating Noah. Any intimidation or public disparagement would trigger sanctions. Eleanor signed, pen burrowing deep enough to tear the carbon sheet beneath. As papers shuffled, Layla lifted her gaze. Across the room, their eyes locked green, meeting green-flecked brown. For a heartbeat, the courthouse din receded, and Eleanor saw not a waitress, but a general marshalling unseen legions. That evening, Sterling Towers' PR director burst into the war room waving a tablet. Ma'am, MetroWire is probing our Panama subsidiary. They're asking about shell leases at the harbor free zone. Eleanor flicked her hand. Stonewall. Already did. They replied with bank transfer screenshots. The director's voice faltered, and someone leaked a voicemail Damien questioning audit discrepancies 6 weeks before his death. Crystal shivered in Eleanor's glass. The tower's light suddenly felt surgical, exposing. She dismissed the staff and dialed a forgotten number, her mother's nursing home. It rang. She hung up. No point. That well had always been dry. Back in the apartment, Layla tucked Noah into bed again. Thunder was gone. Only steady rain remained. She opened Damien's last journal pages, modeled by cemetery damp. A margin note glowed under her lamp. If compassion is a currency, let's make it compound. She closed the book gently. Tomorrow she'd review interrogatories, field Carla's edits, practice testimony. But for one quiet minute, she allowed herself to feel what victory might resemble, not triumph over Eleanor, but safety for the boy who breathed evenly beside her. Across the river, Eleanor stared at the bottle's amber dregs, then at the skyline she once controlled like a chessboard. Somewhere in those shadows, Layla's apartment light glimmered a lone lantern, defying empire. Eleanor tightened her grip on the glass knuckles whitening and whispered the command she'd once vowed never to need. "Find me something she's afraid to lose." "Find me something she's afraid to lose," Eleanor had ordered, and Marcus moved like a bloodhound set loose. By dawn, he dropped a slim USB onto her desk. Target acquired Noah's daycare license lapsed last month. One anonymous tip about safety codes and child protective services will appear before lunch. Eleanor's pulse steadied. Aggressive, yes, but surgical sever Layla's stability and force negotiation. She waved approval, though a faint tremor in her stomach felt suspiciously like shame. Across the river, Layla reheated oatmeal, while Noah packed neon blocks into his backpack. The knock came at 8:02 a.m. Two suited CPS officers, polite but unyielding. A routine check, after an anonymous concern. Layla's pulse sprinted, yet her voice remained steady as she produced inspection receipts, teacher references, immunization records. 40 breathless minutes later, the officers left, promising only a follow-up. Selena called the minute the door closed. "Retaliation already. We'll file for protective relief." "Do it," Layla said, hugging Noah a heartbeat longer before walking him to school. Rain had ceased, but the gutters still murmured like distant artillery. At Sterling Tower, Marcus eyed his phone, protective order motion logged. Eleanor exhaled irritation, yet before she could re-strategize, PR Director Helena burst in, tablet shaking. MetroWire just broke the Harbor Free story Cayman Transfer's whistleblower affidavits. "It's trending." Eleanor snatched the device. Headlines blared, Sterling Holdings accused of decade-long port bribery scheme. Embedded audio, Damien's voice questioning falsified invoices. View count vaulted past $200,000 in real time. Phones exploded. Shareholders, a senator. Her own mother's nursing home, she ignored it. Compliance chief texted SEC notice incoming. For the first time since her father's funeral, Eleanor felt walls tilt. She barked orders, issue blanket denial, schedule emergency board call. Yet denial tasted pointless with Damien's voice ricocheting through cyberspace. Marcus cleared his throat. "IRS liaison is on line 3. Later. She needed a win, any win. Push CPS again, harder." Marcus hesitated. Another complaint inside 24 hours looks vindictive. Eleanor's glare froze argument. He left. Layla returned from court strategy session to find a yellow CPS sticker sealing the daycare door, temporary suspension pending investigation. Parents milled in confusion. A neighboring teacher whispered that state inspectors had cited plumbing violations, while quoting Sterling Holdings scholarships for anyone willing to testify Noah was disruptive. Layla clenched her fists, then forced calm. "Everyone bring your kids to Community Park at 5. I'll organize free evening care until this clears." She texted Carla. "She's targeting children. Time to pull fuse." That night, while volunteers pitched pop-up tutoring tents under string lights, Carla hit send on the embargo breach. 3 national outlets published synchronized front pages at 7:00 p.m. Sharp, scanned invoices, wire traces, photos of port workers injured by substandard cranes Eleanor's shell companies had supplied. Hashtag Jacko Sterling silence topped trends within an hour. TV trucks surrounded Sterling Tower before midnight. Market futures for Sterling Maritime plummeted. Eleanor watched from her office as camera flashes strobe-lit the lobby. She opened the Macallan, then closed it, some part of her finally refusing the old anesthesia. "Legal counsel," Ethan called. "We just received a federal subpoena. And your Cayman accounts are frozen." "How fast," she whispered. "Effective 15 minutes ago." "Eleanor." The FBI task force lands at 6 a.m. She ended the call, staring at Damien's portrait. In the painted eyes, she now saw not reproach, but weary certainty, as if he'd known it would come to this and left a breadcrumb trail so the truth could find daylight. 5 a.m. sirens whined up Fifth Avenue. Agents flooded the lobby, warrant in hand. Cameras captured every badge flash, every hard drive boxed. Share prices cratered at opening bell. Board members resigned by noon. Marcus entered pale. CPS complaint withdrawn. They realized the source was fabricated. But it's irrelevant now. The Empire saved the eulogy. Eleanor muttered, yet her voice carried no venom. Notify my mother's nurse I'm visiting, if the Bureau permits bail. He nodded, stunned by softness, where steel once reigned. Eleanor lifted Isabella's photo thumb, tracing the smile she'd once erased from family ledgers. She whispered to the empty room Layla feared losing Noah. I feared losing everything else. Seems we were both right. Outside, a sunrise too bright for hangovers climbed the skyline, illuminating protest banners that read, "Love outlives greed." Far away on a damp soccer field ringed with string lights and laughter, Noah squealed as Layla chased him between pylons. She paused only when her phone chimed. Selena's text, subpoenas executed, CPS cleared, standby for victory lap. Layla exhaled, feeling the weight of 3 patient years finally shift. Around her, parents cheered impromptu goals, unaware that the balance of power had just tilted for good. Above them, the sky, rinsed clean by relentless night rain, unveiled a fragile blue proof that even empires can't eclipse morning forever. Parents still clapped for the last impromptu goal when Layla's phone rang again, unknown number federal prefix. She stepped away from the field grass, squishing beneath borrowed sneakers still damp from last night's rain. Ms. Brooks. The voice was clipped official. Special Agent Donner, FBI Public Corruption Task Force. We have Ms. Eleanor Sterling in custody. She's requested a supervised call. Layla's lungs tightened. Patch her through. A brittle click, then Eleanor's voice stripped of boardroom echo and filtered through detention static. Layla. I heard. They'll grant bail, but everything's frozen. I can't access counsel. Can't reach my mother. She sounded smaller than Layla had thought possible, as if money had always been the amplifier behind each syllable. Layla forced steady breath. What do you want a meeting? 1 hour. Federal Plaza interview room, bring Noah. No. Silence. Then a rustle, handcuffs against nylon. Please. The word landed like broken glass, Eleanor Sterling saying, please. He deserves my apology. Layla's instinct shouted trap, yet Damien's memory answered louder. Listen first, judge second. I'll come alone, she said. Federal Plaza smelled of copier toner and stale takeout. An agent escorted Layla to interview 4A. Eleanor sat behind a metal table, wrists cuffed to a steel loop. Designer suit exchanged for orange jumpsuit, hair bundled by a prison tie, but her posture remained erect, a queen in exile. You didn't bring him, she said. He's learning to slide tackle, Layla replied. Say what you need. Eleanor's lips twitched at the mental image, heir apparent, chasing a muddy ball. You won. Sterling Holdings will enter receivership. I'll sign any agreement you draft. Full custody to you. Trust fund converted under Noah's name, irrevocable. I ask only visiting rights, supervised, unsupervised postcards, anything. Layla folded her arms. Why the sudden humility? Because the numbers are gone. Eleanor's gaze lowered to cuffed wrists. And without them, I see clearer. I'm 60 years old, allergic to human touch, and the only person who ever tried to love me is buried under a headstone I bought out of guilt. Layla's rebuttal stalled. Compassion. It was always her weakest point against foes. If Damien could hear this, he'd say, it isn't too late. Eleanor's eyes shone sterling green behind film of regret. He left a note in his audit files. She slid a folded page across the table. Guards didn't stop her. Layla opened it. Mom, when you finally read this, choose people over ledgers. I believe you can. The signature D in a carefree loop blurred as Layla blinked moisture away. He believed, she whispered. He did. Eleanor inhaled ragged. I need help to deserve that belief. When I'm sentenced, will you? She faltered. Will you tell Noah I'm trying to change? Layla studied the older woman's shoulders, still squared, but beneath them, a child who'd waited 50 years for someone to clap from the stands. Damien's voice echoed again. Compassion compounds. I'll tell him, she said quietly. But effort must be visible. Como you start is by pleading guilty. cooperating, returning every stolen dollar, no offshore tricks. Eleanor nodded once, boardroom acceptance, yet soft. Done. 3 days later, the plea deal hit every network. Eleanor Sterling admitted wire fraud, foreign bribery conspiracy. In exchange for full cooperation, prosecutors capped her sentence at 15 years parole, eligible at 7. She surrendered all assets beyond a state-mandated personal allowance, most funneled into a restitution trust for laid-off port workers and environmental cleanup, the remainder into Noah's education fund. Journalists spun redemption narrative. Critics scoffed. Layla reserved judgment, watching actions over headlines. And action followed. Eleanor testified before grand juries, named co-conspirators, even offered a tear-thin statement of remorse to injured stevedores via livestream. 1 week later, a plain package arrived at Layla's door. No return address, prison postage mark. Inside lay Eleanor's childhood balance sheet notebook, its margins newly annotated in shaky pen value. Love X time. Beneath a visiting room photo of Noah playing chess with Eleanor, both laughing mid-move. Noah raced into the kitchen. "Mom, who's this?" He pointed at the gray-haired woman in orange. "A friend, learning important lessons," Layla said, throat tight. Noah studied the photo. "Can we visit again?" She tells funny jokes. Layla kissed the top of his head. "Yes, we can visit." And as dusk painted the apartment in amber, she tucked the notebook next to Damien's journal, a ledger transmuted from profit to penance, proof that even when the numbers vanish, the equation can be solved anew. That night, after she slid Eleanor's thin ledger beside Damien's weather-stained journal, Layla slept more deeply than any time since the cemetery encounter. Numbers and memories, once sworn enemies, now rested on the same shelf, quiet proof that even crooked equations could be balanced. 2 years slipped forward. The apartment with peeling paint became a memory, replaced by a sun-washed cottage on Candlewood Lake, paid for from a workers' restitution fund that Eleanor herself had lobbied the court to expand. Layla, newly admitted to the bar, split her days between a community legal clinic and late-night cello practice with Noah, who was now 6 lanky and forever humming Bach. Whitmore Academy had granted him a full merit scholarship. He answered every question about his lineage with childlike frankness. "My dad is in heaven. My mom makes justice. And my grandma is learning to be nice." Grandma, meanwhile, folded state-issued sheets in the Millbrook laundry for $2.65 an hour. The orange uniform no longer chafed. Monotony and therapy sessions had sanded the brittleness from her posture. Guards called her professor after she began tutoring inmates in basic finance. No shell companies, just budgets that kept commissary debts from ballooning. She logged each tutoring hour in a notebook, identical to the one she'd mailed Layla. Margins, blossoming with new formulas. Surplus, yasha, dignity, exploitation, interest, yasha, trust, X consistency. On the first Saturday of every month, Layla and Noah rode the early train north through rolling hills that smelled of cedar to the prison's low-slung brick complex. Visitation Room B always felt colder than the yard outside, but Noah never seemed to notice. He raced to the plastic table cello case, thumping against his knees. Eleanor rose when they entered, slowly, mindful of arthritic wrists, stiff from folding linens. The cuffs were gone, privilege earned by perfect behavior, and the warden's recognition that her tutoring program cut disciplinary incidents by 15%. "Ready, maestro?" she asked. Noah nodded, set the endpin, and coaxed a shy prelude that filled the fluorescent space with warmth. Conversations dulled. Even guards paused. When the final note hovered and fell, Eleanor clapped, first hands reddened by detergent, eyes bright. "He practices every dawn," Layla said, sliding a printout across the table. "Whitmore just placed him in the senior ensemble." Eleanor scanned the page, fingers trembling on the staff lines. "He's already ahead of where Damien was at that age." "Talent compounds," Layla replied, echoing Eleanor's own revised arithmetic. They reviewed business too. The final tranche of restitution had cleared. Coastal cranes were replaced, and the environmental cleanup at Harbor Free reached 95% completion. Eleanor's testimony, delivered in calm, precise paragraphs, had sentenced 3 executives and 2 senators. She would be eligible for parole in 3 more years. The warden's recommendation letter was already drafted. When goodbyes came, Noah hugged her waist without hesitation. Eleanor bent stiffly to meet him, eye to eye. "Keep choosing music," she said. "Whenever you feel small, let the sound get bigger than the room." He grinned. "And you keep choosing good math." Layla squeezed Eleanor's shoulder, an unspoken pact that neither woman would fail. Damien a second time, then led Noah back through the double doors, where afternoon sun sliced the hallway like a promise. Back at the lake cottage, dragonflies skimmed the water. Noah practiced scales on the porch, while Layla updated case notes for a tenant rights suit. She paused, listening perfectly, even bow strokes vibrato, still searching, but true. Inside, above the fireplace, 2 ledgers faced each other in silent dialogue, one that once worshipped profit, one that chronicled a son's plea for compassion. A framed photo of Noah and Eleanor mid-chess move sat between them, balanced like a new kind of family crest. When the last light retreated, Layla closed her laptop and stepped onto the porch. "Recital's over, maestro. Dinner." Noah lowered the cello. "Mom, do you think Grandma will like the piece I'm writing?" "I think she'll hear every note," Layla said, pulling him into a hug that smelled of pine and rosin. "And every bit of progress counts. Just ask her." As they went inside, lake water lapped against the dock, rhythmic as a metronome. Somewhere beyond those ripples, Sterling Tower still cast a broken reflection on the city skyline, reminder of an empire toppled by patience. Yet here, within the cottage's wooden walls, a different equation thrived. Family, love, 3 numbers. Eleanor could finally understand a melody Noah would keep playing, and a balance sheet that at last would never reduce people to lines beneath a total.